Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Zayin. We're at the last words of Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis on the bottom. Amar Rav Huna, Hamenar Talisa b'Shabbos, if one shakes off dust from his garment on Shabbos, Chayav Chatos. Why? Because he did a malacha. Rashi says Zeoli Buna. This is considered cleaning the garment. It's like he's washing it. It's a malacha of malabin. V'lo yamar, this is only a concern el b'chadati regarding new garments, in which case the dust ruins its appearance, and removing that dust is considered to be malabin. Aval ba'atiki, with regards to older garments, less lambad, there's no concern. V'lo yamar, this is only a concern el b'uchmi regarding black clothing, in which case the afar, the dirt here, ruins its appearance, and removing it is considered to be an act of cleansing. But when it comes to white or red garments, less than there's no concern because the afar is not so visible, and removing it is not a vava malacha. V'hu, this is a third condition, v'hu de kapad, provided that he himself is particular about wearing clean garments and he's makpid to have this removed, in which case it is considered to be a significant malacha, a significant act of malabin. So you have three conditions. Number one, new garment. Number two, black. And number three, with regards to his personal preference, he has to have kpeda. He has to be particular about the fact that he wants clean garments. So all three conditions together join to form a malacha of malabin. Continues the Gemara. Ula iklul pumpadisa. Ula visited pumpadisa. Chazar rabbanon. So he noticed the rabbanon that were doing as follows. The kabanapsik limayu. They were shaking off the dust of their garments. Omar, so you exclaimed, Komachalin Rabbanon Shabbata. The Rabbanon appeared to be doing Chilul Shabbos, the desecrating Shabbos. Omar Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yehuda told the Rabbanon, Nefutzi le ba'apei, shake off the garments right in front of him, right in front of Ula, in his presence. There's no concern. Anan le kabdina mida. We're not particular at all with regards to the dust on our clothing, and therefore it is not considered to be a malacha of malabin. Abaye have a koy kamed Rav Yosef. Abaye was in front of Rav Yosef. Amalei Rav Yosef asked Abaye, "Havli kum toy, pass my hat to me." Chazas Abaye noticed the ika talale, that there is dew on the hat. Havakamachasim lemeisvele. So he was hesitating to give it to him because he needed to shake off the dew. Amalei. So Rav Yosef noticed and he said, don't worry about the dew. Nefait shadi. You could simply shake it and throw off the dew. There's no concern of a malacha here. Anan like abdina midi. We're not particular at all with regard to this, and therefore removing the dew from the hat is not considered to be a malacha of malabin. Let's take a look at Rashi inside. So Rashi is on top of the Amid, beginning of the words Hamanar Talisa Mina Afar. He shakes the Afar off his talis Chayev Chatas. Why the Zeoli Buna? This is considered its malacha of malabin. Elo Ba'uchmi. This is only a malacha when the garment is black. Sha'avak Mekalkel Marisa, because the avak, the dust, ruins its appearance. V'kapdele, and therefore he's makpid and he's particular about removing it. And it also needs to be black, and also it needs to be new, as the Gemara said, new and black. And third thing is v'hu dekapad alayu. It needs to be something that he is makpid to have the thing removed. Loishan ashinarim. He's makpid from wearing it prior to cleaning it. So when all three conditions are met, it involves a malacha. So Ula saw that the Rabbanon was shaking off their garments, and he said, "Kamachali Rabbanon Shabbata uglimi uchmi havo." So Rashi points out that those garments were black. So why isn't that a malacha? Like abdinan, so there is Rav Yehuda responded, we're not too particular. Yichbas, we don't really care. Yeshale avak, if it has dust on it, hilkach lav libanu. There's no concern of libun. So Rav Yosef asked Abaye for his cap, kumtoy kavoi, his cap, havakamachasim, loshen sachsam. You shouldn't muzzle the animal. So he was hesitating. He didn't know what to do. Lemeisvele shetzarch lenar tamei, because he needed to remove the dew, and he didn't know if he can do that. And he told him there's no concern because they were not makpid, and therefore there's no malach. Continues the Gemara. Omar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, with regards to another halacha altogether. Omar Rav Yechon, in the name of Yechon, Neitze b'talis mikupeles. If one goes out in Shusarabim carrying this talis mikupeles, a folded up garment, munachas le'al ksefai, which is sitting on his shoulder, b'Shabbos, chayav chatas. Why? Because he's not wearing it, he's merely carrying a load. Let's see Rashi inside. So it's the next Rashi. There are 7 lines from the top. Betalas mikupelas. So after he placed the talis over his head, he lifted the lower edges and folded it up on his shoulder. Chayav chatas. Here the chiddush is he's not simply taking something out of his drawer and putting it on his shoulder. It means he puts the talis over his head, it's hanging down, and then he decides to fold it up in such a extreme manner to have the bottom parts all the way up on his shoulder. It's not derech malbush, it's not the normative way of wearing a garment, and therefore it's considered a masu in his chayav chatas. Tanya Namihachi, says the Gemara, we learned in the Brisa likewise. The garment merchants, hayotzim betalisos, miku palois, umanachas al ksefim b'Shabbos. So they have this custom of wearing the talisos folded up, sitting on their shoulder, so that they do that on Shabbos, chayav and chatas. This wasn't only said regarding these merchants. Ella kol adam, any person as well who does this, ella shadarkan shel moichen lotzes kach. The reason why the Brisa cites the merchants as an example is because this was their derech. The darkan of the moichen was to go out wearing their garments in this manner. They were displayed in this manner. So the chiddush apparently is that even though this was their custom, their minhag to do it in this manner, it's not considered to be derech levisha because they're simply displaying their wares for sale. It's not considered to be the norm, the derech levisha, and therefore it's a masui. Continues the Brisa with another example. A merchant, a grocer, for instance, who goes out with his money at which are wrapped in his garment chayav chatas. Although he's not doing a derech chaitzah, it's not the normal way of carrying things. He's wrapping in his garment, carrying that way. His chayav chatas is considered to be carrying a load. This is not only said regarding a chavani. Ella kol adam, even any other person who does this is considered to be carrying on Shabbos. Ella, why then do we discuss a chavani shadarka shel chavani letzes kach? It is the norm and the custom of a chavani to go out wearing his money in this manner. And the chiddush here is that we don't consider it to be shaloi kederech chaitzah. We learned in the Mishnah earlier in Masechta that if one carries something in an ordinary manner, for instance in his mouth, etc., it's not considered to be a malach on Shabbos. So the chiddush here is, since sometimes people do carry the money in this manner, for instance the chavani, so therefore that sets the standard, is considered to be a derech chaitzah, and even for anybody who would do this. A third example in the Brisa is haratonen. So the people of this place called Raton, yoitzim b'sudoran shal ksefim. They're allowed to go out wearing their sudar, some type of scarf, sitting on their shoulder, because that's considered to be the derech levisha of the scarf. Like today we wear a scarf around our necks. We don't say it's a masli. That's the way to wear a scarf. The Mefarshim actually point out that all along our Gemara we're going to see different examples of folding garments this way and that way. It's a matter of the derech hamakim. Whatever's the minhag, the normal way of wearing that type of garment, that constitutes derech levisha for that garment and that locale. The Gemara here is citing examples which were prevalent in the places, in the locales where the Gemara was discussing. So we have an example of something which is permissible, the sudaran, sitting on the shoulders of the ratanim, that's okay. This wasn't only said specifically about those people. Ella kol adam applies to anybody. Ella shadark and sharatanim lets us bekach. The reason why we cite them as an example, because it was prevalent for those people to go out carrying the sudar in this manner. Rav Yehuda Masa, there was a story about Hurkanus, with a person named Hurkanus, who was the son Benoi Shel Rav Lezer ben Hurkanus. He went out wearing the scarf on his shoulders on Shabbos. Ella, but he was extra careful. Ella shenima kruchale betzvay, but he had a strap of this scarf, which was wrapped around his finger. Rashi explains, in order to prevent the scarf from falling down and avoid a situation where he might carry it, so he wrapped it on his finger so it doesn't fly away. When this story was presented before the Chacham Amr, they said, there's no need to do that. Even though a person does not have a strap surrounding his finger, that's okay. There's no concern of carrying. It's considered to be derech levisha. We're not concerned it's going to fall off and he's going to carry it on Shabbos. Dorash Rav Nachman Rav Chizda. So he announced as follows: Mishmei Rav Chizda. The name of Rav Chizda, halacha. One can carry the sudar, wear it in a normal manner, even when there's no nima, there's no strap wrapped around his fingers. Ula iklo lebe'asi barhini. So Ula visited the home of Asi barhini. Bo minei. So they asked him the following question: Ma'u lases marziv b'Shabbos? Can a person make a marziv? So the literal translation of marziv means a gutter, eave trough, a water spout coming from one's roof, for instance. So it was a roundish shaped piece of equipment. Can one wear his clothing in this manner? The Gemara soon will explain. Amar Lucy responded to them, Hachi Amar Rabbi Loi. This is what Rabbi Loi said. Osur lasis marziv b'Shabbos. One cannot do this on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, my marziv. What is this marziv? Amar Rav Zera kisi bavlaisa. The pockets of the people of Bavel. Rashi explains this to mean as follows: they would have these long garments, and they would be masalik bigdei menars. They would lift it off the ground and fold it up, create these ruffles, these pockets, and strap it up with straps. In this way, the shape of the garment maintains it in a certain form, and a certain ruffle, a certain fold is considered to be a tikkun of the beged, and it is asr. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah Yosef K'mei Rav Zera. Rabbi Yirmiyah was sitting in front of Rav Zera. Amar lei. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Rav Zera, Hachi mai, is this allowed? So he showed him a certain type of style of wearing his clothing. Is this considered to be a marziv? And he said, Amar lei asr. It's asr because, once again, the point here is that it's a tikkun money. He's repairing and fixing the garment by maintaining a certain shape, a certain fold, a certain way of ruffling it. So he said it's asr. Now he showed him a different style of wearing the garment. Is this okay? Amar lei asr. Amar Papa, let me give you a formula. Hold on to this formula, biyotcha, in your hands, meaning this is the principle which determines. If his mind, if his das, if the manner in which he's folding up his garment is adata l'chnufi, to gather it together, to fold it, to keep it into a certain shape. Rashi says this shape is meant to stay this way for all time. It's considered to be something kavua, something permanent. Therefore, it's asur, it's being masakin the beged. Called the shari. If he's merely gathering it in a manner which is meant to enhance his appearance, it's not something which is meant to stay that way permanently. He's not fixing up the shape or creating these folds. In this case, it's perfectly permissible. So he would do as follows: Misna bet sadina hava. He would be misna. He would enhance his appearance by folding up and shaping and wearing his garment in a certain manner, without any kavana, any intention of forming folds and ruffles and enhancing the actual beged itself. He masak in the beged. It was merely a temporary a style of wearing his clothing, lisnois, to enhance his appearance. Now Tosfos actually learns the Gemara in a different manner. He says we're discussing the halacha of haitzah, just like the Gemara before discussed, a person who goes out wearing a folded talis, he's doing a haitzah because he's carrying a load. It's not considered derech levisha. So Tosfos learns this Gemara as well regarding marziv in the context of a malacha of haitzah. He says it depends on how seriously he's folding up the beged. If he's doing it very extensively, he's folding it up, he says, on one side, so that he's gathering it all on one side, like when we put our talis in the morning, so we wrap the whole beged all our head and we turn the whole beged over to one side. So that's called derech masi. Tosfos says he's doing it so that he could walk quickly, so it doesn't inhibit his walking. That's considered to be a masi. But if he's merely gathering it slightly in a way which is merely trying to enhance his appearance, then that's okay. Continues the Gemara, Ki Asr of Dimi came. Omar, he said, Pamachas Yotz Rebbe L'Sada. There was once a story, Rebbe went out to the Sada, V'hoyushnei tzidei talisoi, Menachan al Ksefoi. So both sides of his garment were situated placed on his shoulder. So for instance, like the talis we wear for davening, which was hanging all the way down, and he simply folded the sides over to his shoulder the way we do by davening, and the front and the back were actually hanging down. So it was only a slight fold. Amar Lafanav. So you were in this manner. Amar Lafanav Rabbi Yeshua ben Zirus. So this person, Yeshua ben Zirus, challenged him. Yeshua ben Zirus, who was Ben Chomev Shor Meir, the son of the father-in-law of Rav Meir. So he challenged Rebbe And he said, Bazula chiev Rameir chatas. How could you wear the garment in this manner? Didn't Rameir hold a person liable for chatas when he wears the beggar in this manner? It's considered to be carrying a load. Amar lei, so Rebbe responded, really? To this extent, it's merely a slight fold. Only the sides are gathered up. Diktek Rebbe Meir at Kan. Rebbe was so particular even to this extent? Okay. Shilsha Rebbe Talisa, so you unfurled it and he let it down. Kyasa Ravin, when Ravin came, he had a different version of the story. Amar, he said, the person who challenged Rebbe was actually a different person. Lo Yeshua ben Zirus Hava. It wasn't a person with that name. Elo Yeshua ben Kupusoy Haya. Actually, that was his name. And he was Chosnei Rebbe Kiva, the father of Rebbe Kiva. Amar, and he told Rebbe, Bezul Rechiv, Rebbe Kiva Chatas? Didn't Rebbe Kiva hold a person liable for Chatas when he wears his garment in this manner? Amar Loi. So Rebbe responded, really? Diktek Rebbe Kiva Atkan? Rebbe Kiva was so medactic, was so particular, even to such extent, he regarded it as a masoy. Okay, Shulsha Rebbe Talisa, Rebbe unfurled and lowered down his garment. Ki Asa, Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. When Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda came, he had a different version of events. He actually said that Rebbe wasn't wearing his talis in this manner, but he said as follows, Amar, he said what happened was Nishal Itmar, he was actually asked, the halacha. So it wasn't something which he was doing, but somebody asked him. So he was asked regarding wearing the talis in this manner, can one wear it with this slight fold? And he wanted to be motivated, he wanted to allow it, and this person who was there challenged him and quoted either Rebbe Kiva or Rebbe Meir that this is considered to be a load and not derech malbush, and Rebbe acquiesced. So in summary, we learned several halachas. If one shakes his garment from its dust, his chayav chatas provided we meet three conditions. It's a new garment, black, and he is makpid on it. Regarding wearing a talis mekupelis, which is folded up, gathered up onto his shoulders, that's called a masoy and his chayav chatas. Regarding wearing a sudur al kseifa, a scarf on his shoulder, that's considered to be derech malbush, that's okay. Regarding folding up his garment to be masakinit, that's asr. If he's only doing it to enhance his appearance, that's mutter. And the Gemara concluded that even merely slightly gathering his talis up onto his shoulders, just the sides, even when the front and back is hanging down, that is also a concern of a load, and one cannot do that on Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah, if one bathes on Shabbos in the hot water of a cave, or the hot water springs of Tveria, and he dried himself afilu be'eser al antiyos, even using 10 towels, in which case there's very little water and moisture present in each one of those towels, nevertheless is a concern. Lo yivim biyada, he shouldn't carry them by hand. He shouldn't carry them back home because he might be tempted to squeeze the moisture out of those towels and do a malacha. Aval asar b'nei adam, but 10 people mistapkin balontis achas. They could even dry themselves using one towel. Pneim, yedeim, ragleim, their faces, hands, and feet. In which case, there's lots of moisture present in those towels. They don't need to hesitate to bring them, to carry them home in their hands, because since there's a rabbim, there are many people there, they will remind each other and safeguard each other from doing a malacha. Continues the Mishnah, one can anoint himself with oil on Shabbos, and massage himself. There's a girsa that adds the words bivnei me'ayim on one's stomach. So that's allowed. Rashi says this is lahana, for the sake of pleasure. But one cannot engage in intense massaging, which it appears to be derech choil, a weekday act. One may not take a scrubber, this type of comb which they used to scrub themselves with. You can't do that. Rashi says here as well, it's a uvda dechoil. It's a weekday activity. In Yordan lekurdima, one may not go down to this river called Kurdima, the Gemara will explain. This is a process where a person would cause himself to vomit on Shabbos. They can't go ahead and straighten out the limbs of a newborn child. One cannot put back a broken bone back in place. One whose hands or foot came out of its joint, he can't vigorously treat it with cold water to restore the joint, but he can rinse himself in a usual manner. Then nisrapen, if he got healed, then that's fine. Let's see Rashi inside. 25 lines from the bottom, beginning with the words Masnisan Mei Ma'ora. So he bathed himself in this hot water in a cave. Mei mikveh mikura shucham. It's hot. Ve'in choy me'yotzei. Its heat doesn't leave. It's a covered area. V'dafka chamanakat. The Mishnah specifically mentioned hot water. Umishum hochi ketani. That's why the Mishnah chose the word haroichetz. Haroichetz is the eved. It sounds like it's after the fact. Initially, one is not meant to bathe himself on Shabbos using hot water. We discussed this earlier. The Masechta, there's a concern about the bathhouse attendants who would heat up water on Shabbos. So one is not meant to go into hot water on Shabbos. That's why the Mishnah uses a b'di eved lashon. Haroichetz, he did it already. V'nistapek, and then he dried himself a kineach, afilu be'eser alontiyos, sadiran, these sheets, these towels, shemekanchen behem, that one uses to dry himself, v'sipek behen zeh chazeh, and use 10, one after the other, Rabbusi. Now the Mishnah is teaching us a novelty, a chiddush. The loy nefesh shemai b'chochad, even though there's very little water in each one of these towels, afilu hochi lo yivim b'yadeh b'seich beisei. Nevertheless, he should not bring the towels that contain very little moisture in his hands, to bring it home. Even though there's an air, there's no concern of carrying, because he might forget and he might come to squeeze those towels on his way home. Since we have many people, there's a minyan. There are many people in they remind each other and prevent each other from doing a malacha. They can dry themselves using one towel. This also is a chiddush. One towel for 10 people. Lots of water in there. Even so, they're allowed to carry it with their hands. So they wipe their faces, hands, and feet. Says Rashi, this is merely the derech, meaning it's not specific to this case of hands, faces, and feet. Even though they use the towel to wipe the entire body, and there's lots of water in there, it is still mutter. Sachen shemen b'Shabbos, one may smear himself, anoint himself with oil on Shabbos, umemashmeshim b'yad, and massage using a hand, al kol aguf la'anoah, simply for the sake of pleasure. But this intense form of massaging, l'shafshaf b'koyach, that's not allowed. Likewise, one can't scrape his skin using this scraper, let's say weekday activity. One shouldn't go down to this river called Kurdima, Shema Nor, name of a river of Gemara, Farish Taima. The Gemara will give us the reason. One should not engage in apik tevizin lahoki, bring himself to vomit. One can't help form the shape of the cotton. Loshen yadecha itzvuni. Shemesaknin, they fix up a miyash v'natzveisav. They properly form his bones, v'chulios shedrasei, and the vertebrae of his spine. Commit the samai to his proper shape. The Gemara will give us the reason. Ve'machzir etzem shenishbar. A broken bone cannot be restored. Kol refuah asura mishum shchika samamanim. Why? Because any type of refuah, engaging in remedial activities, is also for concern that a person might be sheichik the samamanim, grind ingredients needed for the refuah. Nifrika means sheyatza etzem miperik shalai. His bone came out of his joint. Leitrafim. He shouldn't vigorously wash it with cold water. Lashon beit and trufis bekara. So to vigorously beat the eggs in this bowl. So one shouldn't seriously wash his limb with cold water in order to restore it. But as Mishnah concludes, he can simply do a normal washing, and if this results in refuah, then that's okay. Continues the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. Ketani mei ma'ara dumi de mei tveris. At the beginning of the Mishnah, cites 2 examples. He's roiches of mei ma'ara, and also we have an example of mei tveria. The fact that the Mishnah compares both things, lists them both together, Mishnah is teaching us that the mei ma'ara that we're speaking about is hot water. Ma mei tveria, just as the mei tveria is certainly hot, chamen, af mei ma'ara chamen. Likewise, the mei ma'ara described here was speaking about hot water. And that's why the Mishnah used a b'di'evad terminology. Haroichetz di'evad in. Chatchila loy. Initially, one is not meant to bathe himself in hot water on Shabbos. Now, Tosfos points out, this is only a concern when it comes to the Mei Ma'ara. This actually says it's called a Mei Mikvah, like gathered water, hot water. So that's a bath in hot water, which is also but naturally hot water, like the natural hot springs of the Mei Tveria, that is okay. L'chatchila, Tosfos brings the Gemara in Daf Mem that there was no gzeira to bathe in the Mei Tveria on Shabbos. So this discussion that one cannot bathe in hot water on Shabbos only pertains to the first example of the Mishnah of Mei Tveria. The fact that the Mishnah lists them together with Mei Ma'ara with Mei Tveria, apparently the Mei Ma'ara is speaking about hot water, which was heated through fire, in which case a person is not meant to bathe with this water on Shabbos, even though the water was heated before Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. So this is only a restriction regarding bathing in a normal fashion in this hot water. Mechlal, apparently the l'shtatev kol gufay, merely to take the hot water and rinse himself, pour it over his entire body. I feel like that can be done even initially. There's no concern with that because that's not considered to be a derech or chitza. That's not the usual manner of bathing. Therefore, there's no issa d'rabbanan. Let's see Rashi. The top line, the l'shtatev, says Rashi shoychen al gufay. So he simply spills it, pours it over his body. It's not derech chitza. It's not considered to be the normative way of taking a bath. Shori l'chatchila, afilu b'cham, and that can be done even using hot water. Says the Gemara on the second line, Mani. So who is the shita that allows rinsing oneself, washing oneself in this manner? Reb Shimoni. The Sanya leishtatev adam ben b'chamen ben metzoyin. Reb holds one cannot even rinse himself using hot or cold on Shabbos. Now even cold, the Parshim explained because I believe it's Tosfos earlier that it was the derech to bathe was hot and it was cold. It was a whole procedure in the olden days. So even using cold water appears like one of the phases of taking a bath. If the Chachamim prohibited even tzoinin. Reb Shimon Mater, he says rinsing, that's not considered to be derech or chitza. So the bath would be sitting in a bath, immersing oneself in a bath. That's considered derech chitza. But rinsing oneself, there's no concern. And the chiddush here is even using hot water. And indeed, our Mishnah, which seems to allow, we have a diak from our Mishnah that one can rinse himself using hot water, is Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda, he makes a compromise. B'cham and asur, b'tzoyin mutar. Rinsing oneself with hot water is asur. That is similar, it's akin to taking a bath, and therefore it's asur. But using cold water, that's okay, and that's allowed on Shabbos. So rinsing oneself with hot is asur, with tzoyin is mutar. Continues the Gemara. So if one took this bath and he wiped himself even using 10 towels, he can't carry it. The Mishnah proceeds if we have lots of people and they use only one towel, so this shared towel may be carried, there's no concern. Says the Gemara, he wiped himself with 10 towels. The initial part of the Mishnah, which describes a person drying himself with 10 towels, is teaching us a chiddush. V'seifa rabusa kamashmal, and likewise, the next case of the Mishnah, which describes 10 people drying themselves with one towel, is also a novelty in a chiddush. Reisha rabusa kamashmal. The first halacha is teaching us a novelty. Even these towels, which don't contain lots of water in them, it's one person who used 10 towels. Kivan the chadu, since he's merely one person, also the schita is a concern that he might come to squeeze it. Therefore, he can't carry it home. The next halakha is teaching us a chiddush. Even these towels which contain lots of water, 10 people dry themselves using one towel. Since there are many people there, they remind each other and they can carry it home without any concern. One can dry himself with a towel and then place it in this cubby, in this window. Rashi says it's near the wall of the bathhouse. But you shouldn't hand it over to the bathhouse attendants. Why? They are suspected of this malacha of squeezing towels to dry them. So you shouldn't hand it to them. There's no concern. He can dry himself with one towel and carry it home even with his hands. There's no concern of schita. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. So Abaye asked Rav Yosef, how does the halacha follow? Is there a concern of schita or not? With regards to one person carrying home his towel, Amalei. So Rav Yosef responded, Ha Rab Shimon, we have Rab Shimon who allows. Ha Rebbe, we have Rebbe who allows. Ha Shmuel, ha Rabbi Yochanan. Likewise, you have Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan, not concerned about schita. Explains the Gemara. Rab Shimon, what do we find that he allows? Ha Damar, as we just said, Rab Shimon specifically stated, one can dry himself and carry home the towel. Rebbe, what is the example of Rebbe? The Sanya as we went to the price. Amar Rebbe. Made in Torah, when we were learning Torah by Rab Shimon in the town of Tekoya, this is what we used to do. Hayumalin shemen, we used to bring the oil of aluntis. We used to go ahead and bring up the oil and the towel from the chatzar to the gag, to the courtyard, to the roof, umegag, lekarfef, to the storage area. We used to transfer through all these non-residential areas. Rashi explains this is Shittas Rab Shimon, which does not require an eruv when transferring something between all these non-residential areas. So we used to bring the oil and the towel through all these different areas until we used to get to the spring, Achiyum Shiyinu Magin, Eitzel Mayan, until we got to the Mayan. Shiyinu Reichsambay, where we would wash. So apparently there's no concern when it comes to wiping with themselves drying themselves with a towel. Rashi says we assume that he would carry the towel home with him. So apparently there's no concern of schita. So this is an example where Rebbe is clearly stating that there's no concern. Shmuel, where do we find Shmuel subscribes to that? One can dry himself with this towel and carry it home. Rabbi Yochanan, where do we find that he adopted a lenient approach to Rav Chiba Abba Rav Yochanan halacha? Mistapik Adam baluntis. One can dry himself with this towel and carry it home with him. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan hachi? Is that so Rabbi Yochanan? How held that one can dry himself with a towel without any concern of squeezing? For Rabbi Yochanan, did Rabbi Yochanan tell us? Halacha kistam Mishnah. The halacha follows the anonymous Mishnah. Utzanan, and in our Mishnah, which is a stam Mishnah, it says clearly vinistapik. A person rinsed himself and then he dried himself with a towel. Afilu be'eser alantiyos, even if he used 10 towels. He cannot bring it home. So this is a stam Mishnah which is concerned about schita. Says the Gemara, it's not a stam Mishnah. Who? Kiven chachinai masla. Rabbi Yochanan had a different version of our Mishnah. It is said in the name of Ben Chachinai, and therefore it's not considered to be an anonymous Mishnah, and we don't need to follow that Mishnah. Amar Rav Chiba, Amar Rav Yochanan. Hol Yoren, so these bathhouse attendants, Mevin Balore Noshim Libebani. They can transfer the towels, the sheets used by the women to dry themselves in a bathhouse. They can transfer it through the Shusarabim. So you must wear it. They have to wear it in a way where it is derech levisha. He must make sure that he covers his head and most of his body with this towel and transfer it through Shusarabim in this manner, which is considered to be derech levisha. Continues the Gemara, Sachnisa, which was a large scarf, Rashi says, which Rashi says it was actually a very thin material. Tzarech lekasher bezer shelamata. He must tie both of its ends downwards, in which case it looks like Rashi says it shouldn't fall off his head. It shouldn't fall off his miroisha, so he has to tie it down. Lamata miksafayim. So you must tie the scarf below shoulder level, in which case it appears that the svara here is that it shouldn't look like a load. It should look like a malbush. Amalu Rava levnei mechayza. So Rava instructed the people of Mechayza, who were responsible for supplying the troops with their garments. So how they meant to transfer the clothing on Shabbos to the troops? When you bring over, you transfer the mani, the garments, to the troops. You should let them down lower than your shoulders. You should have them hang down lower than shoulders, so that it looks like a garment and does not look like a masay. Continues the Gemara, Sachanam and mashmashin. One may anoint himself with oil and lightly massage oneself. Tanaraban, Sachanam and mashmashin b'bnei ma'ayim b'Shabbos. One may do it to his intestines, to his stomach on Shabbos, provided that it doesn't do it in a manner which resembles the weekday manner of doing things. Heichi of it. How is he meant to do it differently, to deviate from the norm? Reb Chaim Bar Chanina Amar, Soch, first anoint, va'achach mamashmesh, and afterwards he massages himself. So he does it in this manner, in which case it is different than the ordinary weekday manner, in which case they do it in the reverse. They first massage and then place the oil. So since he reverses things, that's okay. He needs to do it in this manner. Do it together simultaneously. This is considered to be a proper deviation from the weekday activity. Apparently, he holds that merely reversing the order is not sufficient. Continues the Gemara, Amlin, one may not engage in intense massaging. Asur Lamed on Shabbos, one may not stand Bekarkiisa on the riverbed, on the floor of this river called the Yumsis. Bekarkiisa shall the Yumsis. Rashi describes this as a salty river, where the water is salty and the mud is salty. One cannot position himself on this riverbed, since it warms up the person, umarapi, and it heals him. And one may not engage in doing Rifu on Shabbos. Amar Vidamarab, called Yomer shall the Yumsis, entire period of time in which this river is effective, has that therapeutic effect on the person, is only a short time, Esrim ve'echad yom, for 21 days in a year. Now, at which point of the year do the 21 days fall out on? Va'atzeres min haminyan. Shavuos is one of those 21 days. Now, which direction? Do the 21 days end at Shavuos, or do they begin on Shavuos? Iboilus, they asked, Atzeres lahagisa. So lahagisa is Shavuos meant to be on this side of the 21 or on the other side? Tashma, let's bring a right on Shmuel said, Shmuel was a medical expert, so he made the following statement. Kula shikyani, all these different drinks that one drinks for their therapeutic value, midivcha v'adatzar tamal, they are effective during this window between divcha, which is Pesach, v'adatzar until Shavuos. So only then are they effective. So we see that this window of opportunity actually ends by Shavuos. So apparently here as well, the 21 days are meant to end at Shavuos. Says well, perhaps we can differentiate. Dilma hasamu. This is specific to those therapeutic drinks. The kama the karer alma ma'ali. Because the cooler the world is, so the earlier in the season, that is better and more beneficial for those drinks which are meant to cool off a person. So therefore, that window of opportunity begins before Shavuos. In contrast to us, with this riverbed which is meant to heat up and warm up the person, the benefit comes from the hevel, the warming process. The warmer the world is, the more effective it is. And perhaps Shavuos actually begins this 21-day period, which is meant to take place after Shavuos, when the world is actually warming up. This high quality wine of the town Progita, Umaya de Diumsis, and these high quality waters, these therapeutic waters of the town Diumsis, as we just discussed earlier, Kipchu Aseres Ashvatim Yisrael. They cut off the 10 Shvatim, the 10 tribes from Klal Yisrael. How's that? Explains Rashi, due to their overindulgence and pursuit of physical pleasures, getting overly involved in these high quality wines of Progisa and these quality waters of Diumsis. This brought about their abandoning and forsaking of Torah study, and an absence of that internal connection to Hashem through Limud Torah, which brings a person to the true pleasurable experience. An absence of that pleasure, a person's heart does tend to stray and wander, and eventually they intermarried and they were lost to our nation. Says the Gemara, Blezer ben Arach, Ikal Asam, so he went to these places of Pergisa and Yumsis, Imshech Basrayu, indeed he was drawn after these pursuits of the wines and the rinsing, bathing in these waters, the Yakir Talmudei. As a result of this, his learning was forgotten, because the spiritual element of Torah is incompatible with these worldly pursuits and overindulgence in Hana. So when he returned from these locations, when he returned, Asa, Kiyadar Asa, Kam lemikr b'safar. He got up to read in the Torah. Boy lemikr. He wanted to read the pasuk of Achodesh Hazelachem. And what happened? Amar, instead, he said, Acheresh hayalibam. Their hearts were deaf, meaning unable to understand and absorb Torah. Bo Rabbanan Rachmi Alei. So Rabbanan davened for him, V'hada Talmudai, and his learning returned to him. V'hainu Disna. Now we understand the Mishnah, which says, Rabbanan Rai Oimer, have a goyla makom Torah. Always seek to pursue a place, go into exile to find a place of Torah, which is an environment of learning in which there are other Talmidim, Talmid Chacham present. Don't say Shita v'charecha, that it's going to follow you, that they're going to come join you. Go join, have good company of Torah. Because your friends, your chaverim will indeed keep the Torah within you. Don't rely on your wisdom. Don't sit alone and learn. Make sure to engage with others and be present in a chabur environment of others who are like-minded, are pursuing Torah study like you. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, who was the author of this Mishnah? His true name actually was not Rabbi Nerai, El Rabbi Nechem Yishmai. Some say Rabbi Elazar ben Arach Shemai. So this was the same Tana who had that experience of losing his Torah study due to the fact that he was alone in these places, and therefore he came back and taught us, no, make sure you're always present in an environment of spirituality with like-minded people who will keep your level of Torah and spirituality intact. Now, if it was not actually Rabbi Nerai, so why was he called Rabbi Nerai? Because he lightens up the eyes of Chachamim in matters of halacha. Continues the Gemara, one is not meant to scrub his skin on Shabbos with using this scraper. Who might not scrape with the scraper on Shabbos. If his feet were dirty with mud or tzoya, waste or dirt, he can scrape as usual without any concern because he's simply cleaning himself. His mother made for him megararta de kaspa, a silver scraper, in which case it was apparent that it's unique and special for Shabbos. There's no concern here that he's engaged in a weekday activity, since it was apparent that this was unique to Shabbos. In Yerden le Kordima, one is not meant to go down to this river Kordima. My time why? Pika, since it's bed, the riverbed is slippery, which might cause him to slip and get his clothing wet, and he might be tempted to squeeze him out on Shabbos. One is not meant to bring about vomiting. This is only if he takes and ingests some type of ingredient which brings about this vomiting. But you merely using his hand is okay. Rashi says he places his hand down to his throat and brings about the vomiting. So only using some sort of ingredient which resembles refuah, in which case there's a concern they might grind the ingredients, that's not allowed, but manually doing it is okay. But that's when it comes to the Shabbos, in the context of the refuah on Shabbos. But there's another concern. Tanya, we learned, one is not meant to engage in this type of activity even during an ordinary weekday, because he's wasting the food. He's just vomiting, and they used to do this so they can eat more. So this is considered to be a hefsel eichlin. He's merely ruining the food. One cannot do that. One may not straighten out the bones, the limbs of the newborn. One may wrap up his bones, his limbs. That you can do on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, haven't we learned? One may not do this. Says the Gemara, Hasam, that is speaking about the Chumrei Shedra, when this vertebrae of his spine got out of place, in which case he's restoring it, that's not allowed. The Mesek Kibbain appears like he's building, as opposed to Lefufi Yenuka, which is allowed, where he's merely wrapping him to keep his bones in shape, to keep his body in shape. He's not repairing anything, he's merely maintaining the shape, in which case there's no concern. Okay, time for a brief chazara, brief review of today's daf. We began with shaking the dust off one's clothing, in which case it's considered to be a malach of malabain. He's cleaning the garment, and that's asur. There's a chiv chatas. The Gemara gave us 3 conditions: a new garment, black, and provided that he's particular about the cleanliness of the garment. We learned that a person can fold up his talis and place it on his shoulder and carry it on Shabbos in this manner. It's considered to be a load. wearing a scarf on his shoulder, which is considered to be the derech levisha, the ordinary manner of wearing that, that's mutter. To bunch up the garment, to be masakin it, to ruffle it properly, fold it properly, that's considered to be a tikkun, that's asr. To merely ruffle it up, fold it up in a slight manner, merely to enhance its appearance, that is mutter. We proceeded with the Mishnah and the Gemara, which gave us guidelines of different things that can be done and that cannot be done on Shabbos. One is allowed to rinse himself using hot water on Shabbos. That's not called derech rechitza. Likewise, he can dry himself using a towel and carry it home without any concern of squeezing it. That was the conclusion of the Gemara. One can anoint himself with oil and slightly massage himself in a manner which is different than a weekday massage. That's not called derech chol. However, serious massaging, lis amel, that's asr, that's derech chol. A person can't stand on the riverbed of the river the Yumsis because it brings refuah. One can't scrape his skin using this scraper, that's derech chol. But the Gemara told us regarding Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda that his mother prepared a silver one, a silver scraper, in which case it was designated for Shabbos, and there was no concern. One can't go to the riverbed of Kordima because he might slip there, and his clothing might get wet and he will come to squeeze them. One can bring himself to vomit on Shabbos using some sort of ingredient, but can't do it manually. The Gemara concluded that even during the weekday, one shouldn't do this because he's ruining the food. And regarding restoring the bones of a katan, that's not allowed because it looks like baina. But merely to wrap him, to maintain his form, that is mutter.